Cool. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, everybody at Stablecoin House. Thank you for taking the time to join. I'm excited to welcome Tomer, the CPO at Stellar, for a little fireside chat. Tomer, thanks for coming by.
Glad to be here.
Thank you to everybody tuning in on the live streams as well. We're going to dig into the real world use cases of stablecoins from one of the OG blockchains that I think.
Calling me old?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay though, you still look very good. But from one of the kind of original OG blockchains that called, I think, stablecoins and payments a very, very long time ago, where everybody else got distracted by crypto casino, got distracted by NFTs, got distracted by meme coins and all these other things. I think Stellar was one of really the first people to have conviction about on-chain payments and to actually stick with that conviction. So I'm excited to chat about some of this stuff. And I think maybe a great place to open is by talking about some of the real life use cases and kind of across Stellar today. Where do you see stablecoins being used, not in the future, but kind of right now in real life?
Yeah, so I think it's a very exciting time because we're actually seeing product market fit today, not some theoretical future version of reality, but actually today. So we're seeing things like the RTM wallet, which is like a global wallet, mostly focused on LATAM. On Stellar processed more than $1.2 billion last year alone. We're seeing things like aid being distributed to refugees in Ukraine on Stellar. We're seeing health workers in northern Syria getting actually payroll from GIZ in Germany on Stellar, saving a lot of money for like intermediaries along the way. Now that Stellar also, we launched a smart contracts platform last year, so we're starting to see DeFi at Stellar. And I think the really interesting thing we're seeing there is this basically taking this base layer of stablecoins, which we think about kind of like the checking account of this new finance, and building more financial instruments and making things like the savings account equivalent or the investment accounts equivalent. And so people with wallets that maybe are holding these wallets because a stablecoin gives them some hedge against inflation in their local currency. Now, rather than just keeping US dollars, they can also get access to RWAs. They can get access to yield from DeFi instruments. And so we're seeing a full stack of like everyday financial instruments getting built with stablecoin as the base layer.
Very interesting. And I think in addition to that, you're also seeing phenomenal interoperability, right? Amaya from Flourish Ventures was talking earlier about some of the investments that they're making. And one of the points that he brought up, which I think was very tangible, was about companies like MoneyGram. And when these sorts of companies are going to start to use stablecoins, the amount of flows that they do compared to people like Tunes and others, they were, I think, 10x, kind of an order of magnitude larger. And being maybe in the US or in Europe, we don't think about MoneyGram as a thing, but actually they move hundreds of billions of dollars. And they have a partnership with Stellar, which is really exciting. I'd love to kind of better understand this stable to cash partnership or rail that you guys have enabled between Stellar and MoneyGram, and maybe dive into some of that usage.
Sure. So like you said, Stellar was really built for payments from the ground up. And so one of the things we've identified early on as a challenge is this idea of access. How do you actually get in and out of crypto and into any type of asset, and specifically stablecoins? And I think sometimes we take for granted, either in like Europe or Northern America, like how easy it is to deal with like exchanges, to move in and out. And even for us, it's not like the easiest thing. And so we built from the ground up, from the early days, what we call the Anchor network, which is a network of interoperable on and off ramps. And we have a bunch of those around the world. And the biggest one is MoneyGram. And so MoneyGram actually allows you to move from Stellar USDC to cash at hand in local currency at more than 400,000 agents around the world.
Is it the entire MoneyGram network is completely interoperable with USDC?
The entire MoneyGram network is interoperable with off-ramping USDC Stellar. Part of it, and growing every day, is also compatible with on-ramping. So you can actually deposit cash and turn it into Stellar USDC in your MoneyGram-enabled Stellar wallet.
Interesting. When you guys were plotting this, I'm curious, was it very Stellar driven, or was it MoneyGram coming to Stellar, starting to realize, because you announced this a while ago, before the stablecoin hype stuff, were they really forward thinking and saying, hey, we need to get access to this rail, or was it kind of a bit of both, Stellar doing some education and MoneyGram being willing to listen?
Yeah, so I think we've been talking to MoneyGram for a while. I think the first time I was in Dallas, kind of like just whiteboarding how like an integration might look like was probably 2019. After that, they had an unsuccessful collaboration with one of our competitors that I will not mention by name, so they could not deal with us. But once that was finalized, we could kind of like go back to this integration. And I think the interesting thing from MoneyGram's perspective and from a lot of companies in the space that have like very established infrastructure is how can they take the existing infrastructure and make it more reusable, kind of like the Amazon AWS story, because you do have these 400,000 agents around the world with cash at hand, able to process deposits and withdrawals, but right now it's like very limited to the current remittance flow. And once you introduce this, which is what in this industry they call like me-to-me transactions, it's basically me coming in with currency in one form and moving it to another form, but still I'm the owner of it. And it's for a lot of reasons, it's actually like a very simple flow from a financial perspective. And so what we worked with them on is kind of like taking their infrastructure and opening it up. And MoneyGram is awesome. They were very receptive to it and have been like a great partner in designing it. It's not easy. And if you think that upgrading like computer software is hard, like try to upgrade like a network of like literally like millions of human beings to handle like new flows. I think it's definitely completely changed my mind about a lot of how the world operates on kind of like the edges and like the last mile. And I think we tend to make in our industry, we tend to kind of like make fun of like these legacy players, the Western Unions and MoneyGrams of the world.
They're the ones with the distribution today.
They're the one with the distribution, and it's a really hard operation. Like being able to, because think about it, you basically have these like each one of these agents has a drawer with cash at their hand. There's like some sort of like orchestration system that needs to ensure that each of these drawers has like just enough cash at hand to actually like process transfers needed. It is a monster of like an orchestration layer, and I'm really happy that instead of trying to win over them, we're winning with them and being able to collaborate.
I think that's really important, is being able to access the traditional rails and make them interoperable with stables, right?
Yeah.
I want to double click on one thing that you talked about with, we don't have to name names, but the unsuccessful partnership of the past versus the very successful partnership today. From Borderless' standpoint, we work across a bunch of different chains. So we've had firsthand experience of some of the pros and cons of working with the way different things are structured. And I'm curious to get your take on what made Stellar's infrastructure work really well for this MoneyGram partnership, where other particular chains may not be such a good fit.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of aspects here. First of all, is really lean in to what the partner does well, right? And so I think for MoneyGram, what they do really well is distribution. It's like the last mile, and I think like tapping into that is what we really wanted to work on with them. If you're trying to go into a company like MoneyGram and completely change, their backend and like their B2B flow and like the way that they move money across borders, that's actually a lot more difficult because it's a very nuanced operation. And so, if you're a crypto innovator and you think that you're gonna teach a 100-year-old company like how to move money across borders like more effectively, I would suggest modesty. And so I think that's one aspect, kind of like lean into what the partner is already good at. The other aspect is, like I said, Stellar was really focused on this from the ground up. So when we started talking to MoneyGram, we already had a set of interoperable standards for them to tap into. We had a set of tooling for them to tap into. And wallets in the Stellar ecosystem already had an integration in place with other anchors, which is what we call these interoperable on and off ramps. And so turning on the MoneyGram integration was as simple as kind of like introducing just kind of like a new flag or a new configuration value.
That's very cool. I think a lot of the recent news has been around the growth of stablecoin transaction volume, and a lot of people compare it to the Visa transaction volumes, the MasterCard transaction volumes, or when you think about payment networks, kind of Visa and MasterCard have been the TradFi giants of that world. What do you think it takes for stablecoins to become as routine as credit card transactions? What are the kind of blockers today?
Yeah, I think my unpopular belief is that there are no major blockers. Like, I think that at the end of the day, from a I think from a kind of like regulatory compliance place where, there's definitely some more work to be done, but we're at a really good place right now compared to previous years. I think if you look at the actual like technical building blocks in place, I think that, companies like Borderless, companies like Bridge, companies like, even Privy for like the wallet infrastructure and all of that area, like everything is there. All the building blocks are in place. The user experience, and I think everyone who has been to kind of like, Southeast Asia and did some kind of like QR code payments, like the tech is there, like it's working, but it really is about getting a network effect, because at the end of the day, in order for this to be meaningful, you need, you need a network effect. You need like a set of merchants. You need like, people to actually be receiving money remittances. So there's kind of like actually turning on that flywheel. And more than that, I think for for builders here in the audience, it's about building applications that actually bring value to users. And I think that in this universe of Web3, we've been kind of like really focused sometimes on marginal gains rather than really kind of like bringing meaningful value into users' lives, and we need to focus more on that.
That makes sense. We've seen a lot of networks try to focus more geographically, right, and try to own like Latin America or try to own Africa or things of that nature. It seems like Stellar is much more of a global vision than kind of trying to go piece by piece. Do I have that right? Would you say that's incorrect? Kind of how do you guys think about the global landscape and where you focus?
I would say that is partially correct. Like if you look at areas where Stellar is active the most, then definitely Latin America is a huge market for us. And I think that if you look at the kind of like currency instabilities in some locations, that lend really well to the use case of US dollar savings. And we're seeing some adoption in like in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So these are kind of like hotspots. There's a lot of things going on around the world, but I would say that probably Southeast Asia is an area that we haven't really tapped into quite yet, and so we are kind of like starting to work more and more on these regions.
Can we get a sneak peek on the Southeast Asia thesis?
No.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Kind of going back to maybe a product lens, because I think that's your bread and butter.
Yeah.
That was my bread and butter for a long time. One of the biggest things that I think people get wrong about stablecoins and about payments in general is it's not a technology business. It's really a trust business.
Yeah.
So from a product standpoint, how do you design for trust, and how do you do that in an environment that has widely different regulatory complexity based off of the different local markets?
Yeah, so I think there's, high level, there are kind of like two directions we're taking this at. One is to actually build a very kind of like trust forward, compliance forward tech stack and product stack. Yep. And then the other is how to actually like bring meaningful ecosystem players into the picture. So I think on the former, if you look at the Stellar tech stack, it's really based from the ground up on trust. Even the Stellar consensus protocol is based on, unlike some other networks out there, it's really based on reputation. And so every validator on the network actually configures which are the other validators that they trust. And the Stellar consensus protocol, which we call the proof of agreement protocol, basically detects the intersection of trust. We call it the quorum intersection. And then those are kind of like the validators that can actually propose blocks. And so if anyone's following, I think there's a lot of discussion right now on proof of stake in kind of like the wider ecosystem, and people are starting to realize that proof of stake might not be the silver bullet that some ecosystems thought it was. And I think that in the best case, like in Ethereum, for example, it ends up that proof of stake is basically this very complex proxy for trust. So if you look at validators in the Ethereum ecosystem, you see, Coinbase, Binance, Lido, trusted players within the Ethereum ecosystem. And so, and when it doesn't work well, you have like a set of anonymous validators that no one quite knows who they are, and that they can make very meaningful decisions in terms of clawing back hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets. We saw that happen a couple of months ago. And so when we talk to institutions, they want to know who's holding the keys. And so I think having like a trust from the ground up like that is super important. Stellar was built with custom built-in tokens that have compliance features that are opt-in, and so an issuer can opt in for like allow lists, deny lists, clawbacks, and so that's kind of like very meaningful. They don't need to write their own smart contracts for that. And when we did introduce our smart contracts platform last year, we really put a strong emphasis on security from the ground up, on like testability from the ground up. And so we really focus on test-driven development. And then there's the ecosystem aspect, which is bringing in experts. So, on the smart contracts, we have an audit bank, and we actually award audits for companies building in a Stellar ecosystem, completely sponsored by SDF. We work on the wallet interactions. We have a partnership with Blockade that does kind of like risk analysis on transactions. And I think we try to work very hard with all the front ends and the touch points in the ecosystem. The important thing is to instill this idea that even though this is, permissionless innovation, and even though, we're talking about self-custody, we still owe our users to do the best we can to prevent fraud and to prevent scams happening.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You made an interesting point earlier that in your opinion, kind of there aren't a lot of blockers left to making this as useful as a Visa card or something like that and really becoming the next payments network. Stellar's been in this game for a very long time. Yeah. So maybe kind of looking back, that was certainly not always the case. What do you see as the biggest inflection points that have happened thus far that have gotten out of the way and started to enable this new belief that we're ready?
Yeah. Obviously, I think we touched on the MoneyGram integration before. I think that, we've had kind of like local integrations in the past, but onboarding such a international global player has been like super transformative, and having this like kind of like an ACE on and off ramp that works for everyone. Yep. And so that was very meaningful. And I think it's just about, there's no, obviously like the regulatory landscape has like changed significantly in the past few months. That has been like insanely helpful, but it's been just like slowly chipping at the rocks, like throughout the years, working a lot with financial institutions, working with wallets, improving these flows. Like if you look at the MoneyGram flow when we launched with them a few years ago compared to what it is right now, it's night and day in terms of like the user experience, in terms of actually catering to the non-core kind of like MoneyGram use case.
Yeah, very cool. The MoneyGram use case probably highlights some of the abstraction that can be possible. And I'm curious, we had a debate earlier. What's your take from a user experience perspective? How much are stablecoins kind of needing a mass market user interface versus how much do stablecoins fade into the infrastructure that's abstracted behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think it's very, we tend to say in our ecosystem right now that it will all be kind of like abstracted away. I'm not entirely sure about that. I do think that there are a few brand names that are going to stay in the game. I don't know if it's specifically USDT and USDC or there will be like other players, but I do think that there will, not hundreds, not tens, maybe just a few, but there will be these like stablecoins that are like recognized brand names. And then I think the long tail of stablecoins will probably be just kind of like back-end infrastructure, whether it's for bank specific, whether it's for like consortiums of banks, or even for like just like large corporations to manage their, even if they're not like finance in core organization, if they have sufficiently large treasury, it might make sense for them to use stablecoins.
Makes sense. What's the one big takeaway? Just kind of maybe as a wrap up. What's the one takeaway that you would leave everybody with on taking stablecoins from hype to habit, to throw this back to the title of this?
Yeah, I think just keep your eyes on the ball. I think, like you said, we've been at this for a decade now, and there were a lot of distractions along the way. Yep. And I think that having like a very clear mission, our mission is to create equitable access to the world's financial system, and having very clear kind of like lighthouse values, I think that is super helpful. So stay focused on your mission and really build products that have a value proposition for the users. We need to increase the pie in the Web3 ecosystem rather than just kind of like pull TVL from like one protocol to another. It's just not very maintainable.
No. And then maybe last bonus question for people that are interested on building on Stellar.
Yeah.
What are the best resources to get started?
We have the best developer docs in crypto. So go to stellar.org, go to the dev docs, and DM me on Twitter if there's anything missing. I'm Tomer Weller. And thank you for enduring this intense heat with us here.
Thanks, Tomer.
Okay.
Do you want to take audience questions or call it a day?
Sure, we can take audience questions.
Any questions from anybody here at the house?
When's Western Union next?
I have no comment on that. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about like the progression of Stellar, because early on, you guys have been around forever and ever and ever, but it took you a long time to do smart contracts. Like, was that very intentional? Was it like, ETH came out with smart contracts in 2015, and you guys came out like last year. Was that super intentional? Was it you thought you could do everything without smart contracts? I'm just kind of curious, like how that progression happened.
Yeah. So Stellar was conceived in 2014. This is pre-Ethereum mainnet, right? Smart contracts are not necessarily a thing quite yet. And so the idea behind the design of Stellar was basically, so what you had back then was Bitcoin, right? And Bitcoin, and we tend to ignore this a lot these days, Bitcoin had like really great product market fit for payments in its early days. People realized that you can, as long as there's like buy demand in one part of the world and sell demand in another part of the world, you can transfer value. And so people were using it for payments. The problem is that the compliance space was kind of like not mature. Volatility was like crazy. Add that to the settlement times, which were like 60 minutes at the time, and that made Bitcoin like really bad for payments. So when Jed McCaleb started working on these systems, the idea was like, how can we take Bitcoin, the good parts of Bitcoin, and kind of like improve on everything needed for payments? And so fast confirmation times, reserve-backed assets, which is what we call stablecoins before they were called stablecoins. And basically all the primitives that are needed are kind of like baked into the protocol. And assets are baked into the protocol, a DEX is baked into the protocol, accounts, multi-sig, time locks, hash locks, like all the basic primitives that you thought you would need back in the day without the need for actual programmability. And programmability, by the way, they thought about it at the time. The conclusion back then was that it will be so risky and so much money will get lost to hacks and bugs that it's better not to do it, which actually kind of ended up being true. I think the thing that and if you kind of like roll a bit forward to 2018, 19, you see like CryptoKitties happening, and the feeling was, okay, we got it right at Stellar because like we're not choking the network on these kind of like nonsense applications. I think what we kind of missed at SDF back then was that there is a lot of trust minimized financial innovation, what would become DeFi, that is made possible with smart contracts. And we're kind of missing out on that by not having smart contracts. So for a while, we actually added AMMs in the protocol level after kind of like Uniswap v2 started becoming successful. But it took us a bit of time, and actually creating AMMs and the process that led there made us realize that actually Stellar and SDF, what we're really good at is building infrastructure. We're good at building kind of like the operating system for these financial instruments. And so let's open up innovation, which led to Sorobon, which is our smart contracts runtime, which I can talk for hours about, but I'll spare you right now about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe one last final question for Tomer.
Yeah, so what's your take on all these brands and corporates that wants to do a stablecoin for it?
I think they're roughly divided into two. One part being, there's this thing that's happening right now, kind of like we need to go on the hype train, we need to have, crypto strategy, we need to create a stablecoin. A lot of times I think people don't necessarily understand what that means. I think increasingly we are actually seeing more and more institutions getting visibility into what's actually good about stablecoins. A lot of times they start from wanting to issue a stablecoin to understanding that actually using some of the existing stablecoins or the existing stablecoin infrastructure is better than doing it yourself. And so yeah, we're seeing a lot of enterprises being much more intentional and like understanding the benefits of it now.
Cool. Thanks, Tomer. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you so much. Whew, that was fucking hot.
It's hot in here.
Holy shit.
The
Okay.
AC is on. This is full French air conditioning.